This is the lesson 4.5 mini lesson. Our teaching point is you will know and be skilled at using the rules for adding and subtracting rational numbers and using the rules to solve real-world problems. Okay, so we're going to do boxes and bullets today. And so what I have here are some of the steps and things we need to consider when we're solving. So I'm going to look at each problem and kind of walk through here. So now I'm using decimals and I'm going to have fractions. So the first thing is if I have a subtraction problem, we're going to change it to an addition problem by adding the inverse. Well, this is not subtraction, so I can skip that. Next it says, are the signs the same or different? Negative plus a negative, so those are the same. So now it tells me if they're the same, we're finding the sum. Sum means addition. If they were different, we'd find the difference, which means subtraction. So now I know I'm finding the sum. I'm going to put a little note there. Now it tells me to take the larger absolute value, put it on the top, and line up my decimal points. So the absolute value would be 8.54. Absolute value is 3.4. This is bigger. So take the larger absolute value, 8.54, and put that on the top. Line up the decimals. So 3.4 goes right here, and then I'm going to add in some zeros. Okay, now I can add 4, 9, 11, but I'm not done. I need to determine if my answer is negative or positive, so I use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger than this. It was a negative, so my answer is negative. Now let's look at number 2. I'm going to walk through those same steps for number 2. It's not a subtraction problem, so I'm skipping. Are the signs the same or different? Positive and negative. They are different, so I'm finding the difference. So I'm going to be subtracting. I want the larger absolute value on the top. Absolute value is 83.875. Absolute value is 29.42. This is larger. It goes on the top. 83.875. I'm lining up the decimals, 29.42, putting in a 0. Now I'm subtracting. Have to borrow here. And then I need to determine if my answer is negative or positive. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger than this. It was positive, so my answer is positive. Okay, I'd like you to give number 3 a shot on your own and then resume the video. Okay, once you've tried this on your own, I can skip the first step because it's not subtraction. Are the signs same or different? Negative and a positive. They are different. I'm finding the difference. I'm subtracting. Larger absolute value goes on top. That would be 920.3. And I line up the decimals. 831.652. I'm going to add zeros in here so that I can subtract. This is going to be a lot of regrouping here. If I have 0, I can't take 2 away. There's nothing to borrow from here, so I'm going all the way to the 3, making it a 2, and bringing over a 10 here. Now I can make my 10 a 9 so that I can subtract here. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 5 is 4. 2 minus 6 I can't do. Again, I can't come to the 0. I have to go all the way over here. 2 becomes a 1. I bring over my group of 10. 10 becomes a 9. Now I have 12. 12 minus 6 is 6. Decimal straight down. 9 minus 1, 8. I can't take 3 away. So I have to again borrow here. 11 minus 3 is 8. I'm not done. I need to determine if my answer is negative or positive. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is larger than this. This is positive, so my answer is positive. Okay, subtraction is very similar, except I need to first start off by changing the subtraction to an addition problem. So the way I do that is I add, so I'm changing subtraction to add, and then I add the inverse. opposite of this second number. I never touch the first one. So I change this one to the opposite, so it's going to become positive. Now I follow the rules for addition. So are the signs same or different? This is negative, this is positive. They are different, so I find the difference. I'm subtracting. I put the larger absolute value on the top. Larger absolute value would be 42.4. Smaller absolute value, and I line up decimals, 3.56. Now I can subtract. I have to regroup here. 10 minus 6 is 4. To regroup again. 13 minus 5 is 8. Decimal comes straight down. Regroup again. 11 minus 3 is 8. 3 minus nothing is 3. But I need to finish. Determine the sign. Larger absolute value would be this one. It's negative, so my answer is negative. Okay, I'd like you to follow those steps on the next two and try them on your own. I have a subtraction problem. I have to add, change it to add, the inverse. Right now it's positive, I have to make it the inverse. Now are my signs same or different? I have a negative and a negative. Signs are the same. I find the sum. I'm going to be adding their absolute values. So the larger absolute value goes on top, 83.9. This absolute value goes underneath, 45.56. Fill in my 0. 6, 14, 9, 12. Now I have to decide if my answer is negative or positive. I use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is greater, it's negative. My answer is negative. Okay, here. If it's subtraction, change it to addition. How do I do that? I change it to add. The inverse was positive, it becomes negative. Are the signs same or different? Positive, negative. They're different. I'm finding the difference. Larger absolute value on the top. 1,346.75 on the top. Absolute value on the bottom, 897.2. I'll put in a 0. I'm subtracting. 5, 5. Again, I have to do some regrouping. 16 minus 7 is 9. Regroup again. 13 minus 9 is 4. Regroup again. 12 minus 8 is 4. Now I have to determine the sign. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger than this. It's negative. My answer is negative. Okay, that's decimals. Fractions is similar, but now I have to remember how I work fractions. So here's addition, so I can again skip the first part. Are the signs the same or different? Here they're the same. So again, I'm finding the sum. If they're different, I'm finding the difference. So put the larger one on top, larger absolute value, 10 and 5/8. And I'm finding the sum plus 7 and 1/4 using their absolute values. I know I need to make a common denominator. I'm going to use eighths. So times 2 times 2. This is already in eighths. Now I can add 5 plus 2 is 7/8. 10 plus 7 is 17. Determine if your answer is negative or positive. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger, it's negative. My answer is negative. I'm going to try this one, and then I'm going to have you try these two on your own, and then again resume the video. I have a subtraction problem. Add the inverse. Add the inverse. Are the signs the same or different? This is positive, this is negative. They're different. Find the difference. I'm subtracting. Put the larger absolute value on the top. 15 and 2/5. Smaller absolute value on the bottom. And then it says make a common denominator. Tenths. Times 2 times 2. Okay, here's where we have to remember how to solve and how we regroup. If I have 4, I can't take 7 away. So I'm coming over here to the 15, that becomes 14. And I have to represent that one whole as a fraction. So using tenths, one whole would be 10 tenths. But I already had 4 tenths there. So altogether I have 14 tenths. Now 14 minus 7 is 7 tenths. 14 minus 4 is 10. I need to finish. Determine if the answer is negative or positive. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger than this. It's positive. My answer is positive. Try the next two on your own and then resume the video. Hopefully you had some success with going through the steps. It's an addition problem. I can skip this. Signs are different. I'm finding the difference. Subtraction. Put the larger absolute value on the top. 12 1/3 minus 6 3/4. Make a common denominator. 12ths. So that's times 3. So I get 9. Here it's 12ths times 4 times 4. I'm subtracting. If I have 4, I can't take 9 away. Regroup. This becomes an 11. I need to write one whole as a fraction using 12ths. So that's 12 twelfths. And I already had 4 twelfths. So I have 16 twelfths. 16 minus 9, 7 twelfths. 11 minus 6, 5. Determine if my answer is negative or positive. Use the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger than this. It's negative. My answer is negative. Okay, here. Change to an addition by adding the inverse. Adding the inverse. Are the signs same or different? Negative and the negative. They're the same, so I'm finding the sum. Put the larger absolute value on the top. 32 7/8 plus 12 5/6. Make a common denominator. 24 times 3 times 3, I get 21. 24 times 4 times 4. Add. 1 plus 0 is 1. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 and 4. This is improper. I need to fix that. So this right here, 24 goes into 41 once. There would be 17 left over out of 24. So altogether, I have 45 and 17 24ths. But now I need to ask myself, is my answer negative or positive? Take the sign of the larger absolute value. This absolute value is bigger, it's negative. My answer is negative.